School refusal is often seen as defiance, manipulation, that's a big one, laziness. It's seen as a choice that the child is choosing not to go to school or that they're choosing to make your life really hard. What if I told you it's their body is actually doing what it was designed to do to keep them safe? You might be thinking, yeah, but the school that I send them to, they're very safe. They may be physically safe. There may even be police officers there. What kind of safety I'm talking about is the neurological safety. And so we are going to dive into school refusal. I'm going to share my personal story with my son. It has been a long journey of multiple different instances and years of school refusal and how we are on the other side of that now. Praise the Lord. And also, I'm going to share some tips and strategies and mindset shifts that I wish I had whenever he was younger and was refusing to go to school. What I'm going to cover today is what I do with parents inside my Purpose Parent Transformation Program. And I'm super excited to announce that I have a brand new program called the Purpose Learning Program, which is communication and social emotional learning tutoring essentially for your child. It's the same purpose framework. I just take the concepts that I coach my parents through, or the parents that are working with me. I take those concepts and I adapt them into a play based, age appropriate way so that they can start developing the skills so that we can see a much bigger transformation in your family. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to raisingkidswithpurpose.com/chat. And I would love to share with you what kind of support that I can offer you and your child. For now, we're going to jump into today's episode and talk about why your kid might be refusing to go to school or not like school. Maybe it's a huge battle every single morning and you're sick and tired of it. And we're going to talk about some tips and strategies and things that you can start doing today. When our oldest was ready for school, we did what most parents do. We looked at where we're going to send him. Here in Arizona, we have school choice, meaning there are so many options. It felt as if we were looking for a college to send our kindergartner to. We picked the best option that did not, the reason why we picked the school is because they did not use the red, yellow, green charts where red is whenever you didn't make good choices, yellow is like moving on the way up, and green is if you're basically if you're the good kid or the bad kid. We knew he would be on red all the time because he needs to move his body. It's very hard for a child who needs to move his body to sit still in a hard seat all day long. Well, we sent him to a traditional school. Looking back, we're like, oh, that probably wasn't the best choice. But now he's in an environment that is very conducive to the way his brain and body are wired. Well, when his brother came along, we just sent him to the same school. He was the perfect student. He would have been a green kid because he needed to hold it together all day long and be perfect in his behavior, perfect in all of the work they did at in kindergarten. They were testing them and doing time math tests and spelling tests. And now looking back, it's like, okay, now that I know how the brain learns and brain development, we probably would not have made that choice. And we did not with our third kiddo, but with him we did. And he was the perfect kid at school. He would get home and lose his ever loving mind. It would all just come out in sideways ways. Is that it would come out sideways. He was physical, very loud, and we didn't know how to best support him. We thought we were failing. There was something that we were doing wrong because he was acting like this when he got home from school. And the teacher is telling us that he is extremely well behaved. Well, we didn't know then. What we know now is that he has a profile of autism called pathological demand avoidance. PDAers is what they call, or what's known as, tend to mask. They hold it together in public in front of other people. And then when they no longer have to mask, it can come spilling out. And that's what was going on for him. And pathological demand avoidance. So that means he can't control it. And it means that he has this high need for autonomy and control. So if there's a perceived loss of control or loss of autonomy, too many demands, it sends the brain into stress response. And for him at home, it was fight. And I knew from what I had researched that his anxiety was manifesting as anger. It didn't make it easier just knowing that. I wish I had a parent coach that could have walked me through on what to do and help my own nervous system, because that's really what he needed. And so from learning that, learning how his brain was wired, we did allow both of our boys to leave and go to a micro school. If you're not familiar with microschooling and you have a kid who has high anxiety, has school refusal, I'm going to drop a link for Prenda in the show notes. I worked for them for 4 years, and it was absolutely incredible to see these kids that really struggled to feel safe, as in neurologically safe, in the school environment, and how they go into this personalized learning environment where it's very relationship based. There's not as many demands. I mean, think about how many demands are in a traditional classroom. They Kids can't eat whenever they're feeling hungry. They can't just get up and go to the bathroom. Well, a lot can't. Maybe you have uh, kids in schools that can. They can't. I mean, there's just not very much autonomy. You're just told what to do all day long. So now, understanding how his brain was wired, it totally makes sense of why he was having these behaviors at home. We did micro schools for a few years until there weren't any in our area. And so we picked the next best option, which was a really small private school in our city. We were told it wasn't going to be as traditional, but it definitely was. And there were a lot of classroom punishments, classroom rewards. And that's really hard for kids like my son. Or maybe you have a kid who's neurodivergent and they have a high like justice meter or what's fair and what's not fair. And they feel extremely out of control if they are losing out on something because of someone else's choice. A lot of times, kids wired like this struggle with team sports. That's why individual sports are probably better. And so when everything really cracked open, when he went to school in those first couple years, never refused. He just did it, but then was coming home and having these big behaviors. Then we did micro school. You could tell his nervous system was feeling way safer, never had refusal. But then what that did though, he got to see and feel what being in a low demand environment was like. And then we put him back into a traditional environment. And then that's when the refusal really started to happen. I still remember we were driving to school. We picked up a little girl on our way, pick her up, and she's was had her homework folder or something. And my son realized he didn't have his. He completely started to lose it because his teacher did row rewards, like all the kids sitting at your row. And if one kid in that row forgot their homework folder, then the whole row suffered, which again, I have some thoughts on, but that's the way that this teacher, ran his classroom. And my son, it became, I can't get myself in there because my actions are affecting all of these other kids. And it was just way too much for him to handle. We pull in, I let the other little girl out, and we're sitting in the car. And there was a lot of screaming and yelling, and I'm not going in there. I know from experience with him is I need to stay calm and regulated and be persistent. That's what I did. I was working a little bit and just giving him some time. I think about an hour and a half. Like I said, I'm very persistent. Looking back, I'm like, what in the world? I sat in the car for an hour and a half. Thank goodness it was not summer because it is hot here in Arizona. And it was October, and I got him into the school gates. He seemed okay. We walked up the ramp and we were at the door. It was a bunch of like trailer pod type of things. So the door into the classroom went outside instead of in a hallway. So we're standing outside of the door to the classroom, and he grabs the handle, turns it, walks in, and within 2 seconds turns around, walks out, and yells, "Anxiety sucks." This poor, how old was he? 10, 9 or 10-year-old could name that this was anxiety, but he could not get himself into that door. And it wasn't manipulation. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't him being lazy or him not wanting to. His body physically was not allowing him to go into that room. We tried week after week and he refused to go. We decided as a family to let him homeschool for a little while. Because in Arizona, if you're in Arizona, you haven't heard of ESA, that's a program, and there's 17 states, I believe, now that have ESA programs. And because of that, we were able to homeschool him through ESA and hire a teacher. But that took a little while, even for him to be okay with a teacher coming to our house. And because it really took a ton of time to build a strong foundation of security, for him to build a foundation of relationship. Once he had the relationship, and then the learning came after that. But it was getting his body and his nervous system to feel safe enough to be able to allow himself to learn. Something I wasn't prepared for when we made the decision to pull him out of school were all the judgments from people. And I know they meant well, but we heard from so many people of, well, how is he going to adjust to adulthood? Or he has to learn. You can't just rescue him. Kids are going to have to learn how to do things that they don't want to do. I got all of that. And we did everything that we could in order to get that boy into school, but his body wouldn't let him. And at the time, I was learning about these things. Dr. Dan Siegel's work, Dr. Tina Payne Bryson, Dr. Mona Delahook. I'm holding this book. If you're watching on YouTube, Beyond Behaviors. This is a great resource, especially to give to your teachers to help them understand what is going on for your kid. But it still made me feel like I was failing. I was doing something wrong. I was setting my kid up for failure. Now I can confidently say it was the absolute best choice for him. It's because his nervous system and his brain were in complete burnout. And that's the thing too, especially with PDA or with autism, is the nervous system just gets fried. That there's no way he would have been able to learn and access that part of his brain that needs to be turned on in order to retain all of the things that he was learning in school. And he needed to heal. He needed to be in an environment where he felt incredibly safe. And it has taken years to get to this place because we had more refusal. So we had some tutors. He did not care for two of them because they were more teachery, is what I call it, and really focused on him doing exactly what they had planned. They would bring their treasure box reward systems and all of that. And he just needed relationship. Then he had this tutor that was absolutely incredible, who really saw beneath the behaviors. When she first started coming, he was still in burnout. She would sit, I'm going to cry. She would sit outside of his room and just read to him. She would just read to him until he felt safe enough to come out and go to the table. And then they ended up working together, I think, for 2 years, 2.5, maybe 3 years. And anytime he was having a hard day or a hard time, soon as she came to that door, Some of it was masking. He would pull it together and he would just share whatever was on his mind and talk the whole time. I was just amazed by how much he learned and how much he grew in that time with her because she gave him the space to be him. He could just walk around the table. He was finally able to be safe. I had found a learning pod and you could pick however many days you wanted to do it. I asked him about it. He seemed excited. And same thing happened. It took a while and lots of persistence, but with this environment, because it did have a lot less demands and it was way more flexible what time he got there, what time he left, what he did whenever he was there, and he made some good friends. It took probably about 2 months before the school refusal stopped. And he just wouldn't. I would pull in, he would get into the car, I would pull into the parking lot, and he would not get out. It didn't matter what I did. But just being persistent, leaning into connection, relationship with him, coming in, figuring out ways where he can feel safe with the teachers there. He ended up loving it. He did that for a few years. And then last year, my other son was at a micro school the year before, and I knew in my heart it was going to be a really good fit for him. But again, transitions are hard, making changes are hard. And so I suggested it to him because he was getting older. He was becoming an eighth grader. And the learning pod was no longer an option. And he didn't want to do any co ops. And so I suggested the micro school. He was totally on board until the first day of school. We could not get him to go. That first week was incredibly challenging. Every day, I would just say, "We're getting in the car." I would try to have not force him, not tell him, "You have to do this," or project into the future of, "You're gonna be a failure as an adult because you're never gonna be educated," and, all those things that probably were in the back of my head, and I just every day, even cuddled with him and, "Hey, we're going." I didn't give him an option, either way. I just kept declaratively stating, "We're going to school." I can't remember because now he's doing great. So it's easy for us just to look at the present. But I think in those first couple of weeks, we got him to go maybe 4 times. And it's just a Monday through Thursday school schedule. And then he started to make friends. And then he started to feel very, very safe and comfortable with the teacher and the environment. And then it is connected to a Christian church, and he started going to the youth group midweek on Wednesdays. And now that boy would live there if he could. And so it took time. Now, the school refusal was extremely hard. And did I know, is it going to work out? I didn't. But I prayed about it. I prayed for him. I prayed for the school and the teachers. I also just knew in my heart that it was going to be a good environment for him. And I built that up for him too. So I think sometimes if a kid is refusing school, that basically what people were assuming that we did with the first one is that, oh, we're just letting him quit. No, we're not letting him quit. Well, we're going to give his nervous system and his brain some space to be able to settle and feel safe enough to be able to go. And then we'll see. And thankfully, it was a good environment, and that intuition that we all have and sometimes we forget to listen to was correct. I share this story to give you hope and encouragement. And also, I want to reflect back on things that I wish I would have known and what would have made the journey maybe a little easier. But honestly, every decision we made, every choice we made, and where he was going to go to school or how he was going to be educated because of this school refusal, every single one of those decisions led us to this path. So, but here are some things that may help you if your child absolutely hates school, or if they're going to school and they're coming home and you're concerned for your safety. I mean, that, to be honest, we were concerned because he would just unravel and had such big behaviors and emotions and was very physical. We had to learn we had all these different things that we had to do, and sensory diet, and making sure that this is the exact routine that we do every single day after school. And it was exhausting. So even though he was going to school, it was so hard once he got home from school. So if this is you, here's some things that we learn, and then I have done a lot of research on and seen how it helps other kids that I work with or that I work with their parents. So, the first thing is to start with the nervous system, not the behavior. What I mean by nervous system is what is driving that behavior. Where are they? I teach this in my programs. I have some episodes on the nervous system. And so there are three different states, and we move through them all day long. And we have ventral vagal, which is your highest sense of self. Then your sympathetic, that's your fight or flight response. That is what we were seeing. My son was living in his sympathetic. Then dorsal vagal, which is complete shutdown. The reason why we decided to move to micro schools was because of my oldest, and he was going into dorsal vagal. I was learning what that meant. He couldn't make eye contact anymore. He was not being his big, vibrant self. It was as if his light or his flame, got blown out. And because of that, we, decided to move him because we knew where he was in the nervous system. So where is your child in their nervous system states? Are they super highly activated and maybe at school or just at home? Are they living in that sympathetic state or that dorsal vagal shutdown way too often? And because when that happens, is the brain floods with stress and floods with cortisol, and then that baseline increases, and it's much harder to gain access to your highest sense of self. And you can ask, like, is the body in fight, flight, freeze, or fawning? Fawning is people pleasing and just doing what they're told because that's, protecting them. And then a reminder is you can't logic your way through these situations when they're stuck in their sympathetic state. I couldn't use logic about you need to go to school when he was super flooded. Again, I was thinking that, but it wouldn't be helpful. You can't bribe or punish a dysregulated nervous system into a regulated nervous system. What they need more than anything else is you, and for you to be regulated and calm. And I have some episodes on that at the beginning, I think like episode 3 or 4. I'll put that in the show notes. And then 2 is to get curious before you start applying consequences. I probably did start with consequences. Well, if you don't go to school, then you're not going to be able to play video games. Or if you don't go to school, then I'm taking this away. The reason why that doesn't work, I talk about this a lot, is because the behavior is communicating an unmet need and or a lagging skill. The consequence does not help with either of those. If anything, it just causes power struggles and it disconnects us from each other. So I encourage you to trade what's wrong with this behavior to like what's happening inside of my child. And you can ask open ended questions. Use declarative statements. That's just making statements. I noticed that you're really angry every time you come home from school. I noticed you hit your brother a lot once we get home. I wonder what's going on. I wonder statements. Those can be your best friends. And then watch for patterns. I had journals of his behaviors and I tracked whenever he was exploding. And not that you have to go to those extremes. I was working with a psychologist who was helping me with this. I was able to see these patterns of, oh my gosh, it's every time as soon as he gets home. So then it's, well, maybe he's hungry. And that was part of it. I had snacks and juice and whatever we needed in the car when I picked him up, but then it was still happening at home. And it was almost as if he was becoming another person. Okay, then 3 is under or identify the underlying need. The behavior is either an unmet need and or the lagging skill. What is that unmet need? Chances are if your child is refusing to go to school, that need is autonomy and agency. It's also predictability, sensory safety. A lot of schools have fluorescent overhead lights, hard chairs that are stationary. They're a lot of times not sensory friendly, so there can be sensory needs there. Not feeling competent or feeling behind or not enough or needing to keep up with the others. With my son, he is left handed and he was left handed until he went to school. Again, something I wish I would have known and would have recognized. And then all of a sudden, he was right handed. And why is that? Because every single kid in his class was right handed. And so he was masking and just doing what they were doing. Now he has dysgraphia and has some crossed wires. Again, things that I just didn't know to look at then, but now we're equipped and now I'm able to help parents. And then 4 is to choose an environment built for the nervous system, not against it. Find a school environment. If you have choices, we have a ton of charter schools, public schools, and there's lots of different kind of public schools. And then we have micro schools. Micro schools aren't always found on Google. Go into your Facebook groups for your city. If there's any mom groups, if you're in any homeschooling groups, you can find micro schools. It's usually someone that is doing it out of their house. And micro schools, at least with Prenda, are 5 to 10 students. My kids' micro school this year, they have over 50 students, but lots of teachers. So the ratio's super low. It's with the older kids, it's like 1 to 15. And with the littles, I think kindergarten is 1 to 4 ratio, which is amazing. Very, very safe for those littles' nervous systems. Look for flexibility and structure where they can move their bodies, where movement comes first, not as a brain break. Movement is the way that our brains learn through movement. We need to move. I know that could be harder if you have a big classroom of all these little moving bodies and it might seem like they're not learning, but they are learning. uh, Looking at environments that do consider sensory needs and allow weighted stuffed animals or for them to flip upside down while they're learning. Even my oldest goes to a charter, but it has a very flexible environment. He was allowed to just get up and walk around. There wasn't a lot of direct instruction. There's a lot of group work. He could be social with others. So find an environment that is more conducive to how your brain or your child's brain is wired. And it's not about lowering the bar. Oh, we have been our culture has us believing that we need to change the child for the environment. But instead, I'm giving you permission. It's okay to change the environment for the child. Then, as they develop, as they grow, as the connections form in their brain, they won't need as many of these accommodations. I see it time and time again, but you have to lay that foundation whenever they're young and their brain is extremely underdeveloped. Then 5 is choose people, teachers, admin, whoever's running the school, if it's a homeschool co-op, if it's a regular school, if you can choose your teachers in the school that your kids go to who see the child and not just the behavior. A question I always ask anytime that we have been interviewing a new school is, how do you handle behavior? That gives you a lot of information on how they view what behavior is. Are they seeing it connected to an unmet need and a lagging skill, and they're going to treat your kid in ways that are going to help build those skills instead of actually make those skills decline because the brain doesn't feel safe, because that's what all the punishments and consequences and rewards and yelling, teachers that yell, that tells me that there's some nervous system work that they need to work on. And so how do they handle behavior? If they say, okay, well, we talk to the child, we figure out what's going on, we come up with a plan together, ding, 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 that tells me that they are looking beyond the behavior and able to see your child for who they are. And it's more whole person focused. And then number 6 is to become your child's strongest advocate. Learn how your child's brain and body are wired. This might lead to you discovering how your brain and body are wired, and you didn't realize maybe there's some accommodations that would have been helpful for you, and there's some things in your life that you can start implementing now. Once we can really see what the behavior is communicating. Then we can communicate that to the teachers, and then there's more understanding. When there's more understanding, we don't get as frustrated or overwhelmed or exhausted because it makes more sense. We're not trying to swim up river anymore. Instead, we are flowing. We're going in the same direction. And remember, you are the expert on your kid. You want to find adults that are willing to partner with you, where that's, the environment we're in. They're like, we're here to partner with you in raising your child. My kids are in that environment for 20, 24 hours a week. And so they have a huge influence on who my kids become. And so you are the expert. You can work with the teachers, with the school, even if I'm not saying pull your kid out of public school. Public school might be a great environment for your child. Honestly, I think it was a great environment for me. I really liked that structure. And I went to a school that really valued fun and making learning fun. But finding the right environment doesn't mean it's one, you need to go to microschooling or homeschooling or I have a friend that she has a 1-day program, or kids can opt into a 2-day program, and it's a full day program. So you need to pick an environment that works best for your kid and then become their strongest advocate. I love Seth Perler. I will include his information. He is an executive function coach. He always tells parents to be the squeaky wheel. But when it comes to if you're putting your child in an environment that's a right fit with adults who really understand brain development and child development, then you don't have to be the squeaky wheel because you can just partner and have just normal, non squeaky conversations. And then number 7 is consistency and being persistent without force. This was huge in getting my son to the learning pod, which again, it took about 3 months, and then getting him to this micro school. I was super persistent. I didn't just give up. What that's communicating to your kid too is I'm not giving up on you. I believe in you. I know this is going to be an amazing thing for you. And yes, they're not always going to like it. Kids don't like boundaries. They don't like whenever we have to tell them no. It doesn't mean it's not good for them. But if you do it in a way that is putting your relationship first and connection first, then what I keep telling myself at least is whenever they're adults, they can look back and be like, wow, my mom did that for me. She didn't give up on me, but it does take being persistent. And then I'm going to wrap this episode up with, just a reminder that, gradual exposure works way better than just forceful or flooding, small baby steps. And the work I do with parents in my programs is we do micro changes, small baby steps. And remember, this is a marathon. I've been running this marathon for, I don't know, a long time. He's 14. So how long? 8 years, 7 years. It is a marathon, not a sprint. Healing timelines look different for every single kid. And if your kid has been in refusal for a long time or has been in meltdown mode for a long time, it's going to take some time to heal and get out of that sympathetic state. And then watch your own nervous system too. What do you need to fill your bucket first? I just finished 5 months with a family. My program's on 6 months, but when they had joined, it was 5 months, and we just finished. And in the very last module, I have some practical tools, and one is a self-care checklist. And they said, "Oh my gosh, we did this whole program, and we didn't realize that we were not doing like the day-to-day self-care, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep." you know, tapping each other in whenever we need help. They did the whole like go to do a spa day, go to have a golf day, but not just the day-to-day self-care. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and be aware of where you are in your nervous system, and there might be some extra support that you need there. And you don't need everyone's approval or their trust. Again, you are the expert on your child, and God chose you to raise your kid. and He will give you the path and the way to be able to get through whatever challenges you might be experiencing, especially if your kid is refusing to go to school. I hope this episode was helpful. And if you have any questions, you can post, you can leave reviews and I'll look at those. You can also email me at hello@raisingkidswithpurpose.com. I reply to every email that I get, and I would love to support you if your kid is in this place where they just won't go to school. Now, go raise your kids with purpose.